Hi, everybody, and welcome to this Rena-Fi live quarantine webinar broadcast. My name is Steve Sampson. I am the video producer for Rena-Fi, and I'm here with Sandy Stamato. And Sandy is a professional business coach. She specializes in small businesses and entrepreneurs, those sorts of folks. And Sandy, I'm going to just ask you, one, did I get that right as to who you are, what you do? And also, is there anything you want to add to it?
No, just I've been doing this for over 30 years. So my background's in marketing, it's in business development, it's in sales training and advertising. So, I've been working with business owners as a consultant and as a coach for some time now. So that's probably the best I can give in terms of my bio.
Yeah, that's short and sweet is what we want. That's perfect. So thank you very much for joining us today and for sharing your knowledge and insight with us. We really appreciate that. Today's session it's the lizard brain. It's sort of, I think, how to get out of survival mode and think more rationally and intentionally and make the most of the situation that we're all in. But even after we get through this current crisis, it's still a lot of really great stuff for us to think about. So you've got a short presentation that you're going to give us, and then we're going to have Q&A. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, whenever you're ready, just go for it.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is lizard brain versus gratitude, vision, and possibility, not only in COVID-19, but beyond. And today what I want to do is I really want to share with you some of the tools and some of the things that I work with my clients around fear. And when I say lizard brain, I'm not talking about, oh my, I'm worried about, this, that, and the other. I'm talking, I am going to die, survival, which is, if anybody's walked into a grocery store and tried to buy toilet paper, we got a lot of lizards running around the grocery store right now. It's a scary time. It's that, most of us have heard of it. It's that ancient part of our brain that thinks we're going to die. And again, very, very helpful. This is what's going on. We're all so bombarded with all this information, and now we're doing technology. And what I was talking about, and if you do want to show that lizard, yeah. So here it is. It's a smart lizard brain, but that is, most of us have heard of it. It's that primitive part of our brain, danger, and it's basically something's going to eat you. And, it's really helpful if you're being chased and you're going to be eaten. But in terms of everyday living, as I mentioned about the grocery stores, not helpful. And what I do, I work with my clients to help them, find something that's bigger than their fear, that pulls them forward. And it's going to require a lot of change. I mean, people are going to have to really change, right? And so I want to talk about change. And I have changed two ways in my life. I've changed marketing. We call it push-pull marketing. And push is where you just get bombarded with information. Coca-Cola, it's a great strategy. But when I'm in fear and I have to change, I'm like so afraid. I've got my fingers, chalkboard. And I get in so much pain, I finally go, fine, I give up. And then there's pull. And when I've changed because of pull, it means something is pulling me forward. That's so much bigger than my fears and my complaints and my worry. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Because what I found is that with that pull method is really what vision is about. And personally, I think it's more important now than ever. And in my world, it's critical. As I mentioned, as Steve mentioned also, I work primarily with small business owners. And when I was researching, when I first started doing workshops, I started doing vision workshops about 8 years ago. I introduced that to my practice. And I wanted to find out what made a small business owner successful. And so I read this article by the Harvard Business Review about this. And what the article was titled, Strategy versus Vision. And here's what they said, I'm going to quote. What you need is a vision that is so big that it's compelling, not only to others, but to you. And if it's not compelling, you won't have the motivation to stay the course, and you won't be able to recruit others to help you. And that's really what this presentation is about. It's about helping you slow down that fear enough so that you have, I'm going to offer you some tools so that you can create a vision for your business, but for your life post-COVID-19, CD, what are we calling it? CV-19 and beyond. And you know, and I'm not talking about fairy dust. I've done this before, and I've had people say, oh, it's fine for you to say, but you don't have blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, hey, I'm not immune to this stuff. We are all dealing with it. But I want to tell you a little secret. I have had something in my back pocket for the last 30 years, and people didn't talk about this. It was way too woo-woo. But I have created a vision board every year that has literally, how do I say this? It's been the course of my life. It is, and that's how I stay the course, but it's been the compass for my heart's desire, and both in my personal and my work life. And what's really interesting about this, and Steve, if you want to go ahead and insert. Okay, so I want to show you my first vision board. And it kind of cracks me up because when I was a kid, they used to call me Danny Partridge, which I did not appreciate at the time. But here I am, I was 25 years old, dressed to the nines, as you can see. But I was, you know, I was invited to this, they called it dream boards or something. These old ladies that were turning 40, because they were so old, invited me to this party. And you know, I at this point was in lizard brain. I worked actually at a TV station. I was making $740 a month net, and my rent was $350. So I didn't have a lot of expendable income. So you can't really see it, but I always crack up when I look at this. What this vision board had was a lot of watches on it. And it was so funny because at the end of the year, I had 6 watches. 2 of them were in Lost and Found. I found one, someone gave me one. My mom gave me one for my birthday. And it's so funny, watches or no watches. At that time, I had no idea how much this would affect my life and what an impact it would have on my life. And so as I matured, so did my vision boards. You know, some people have photo albums. I have vision boards. Yeah. So there you go. So I wanted to know, people are like, sure you did. I pulled these out the other days. It was kind of like actually seeing some old buddies. And so I pulled out all these vision boards because it really has, what's been so powerful about vision boards, and I'm, excuse me, and I'm going to speak more to this, is that it's like a gateway. It offers me an access to a part of myself that bypasses my noodle, you know, that wonderful thinking brain I have. Because vision doesn't happen, and it's not a thinking process, but it allows me to tap into new territory. So what I want to do is I want to share with you a couple, and I have a ton of stories I can tell you. I want to show you some of my very favorite vision boards. This one right here is love. This is I point at this vision board and I say, that's when I met my husband. And it was a really powerful time in my life. And at that time, my husband, I think, said later he wasn't sure if it was me or the vision board that was pulling, who was pulling who, but it was a really powerful time. This one I really want to show you. This is one of my very favorites. Now, at this time, this was, I think, a little close to 2000. This is probably 1999. I was a consultant, and I heard about this job. I wanted to work with a team. I was tired of working by myself, and I wanted to work with a team. And I heard about this job at this creative agency, and I was so not qualified. I mean, I knew business development, I knew marketing, but this was like where the big kids sat, right? And so I heard about this job. What I did, this is even before the job, I made this vision board, and that picture in the middle where the woman's standing there and she looks happy, if you can see, there's a color of paint, and that time it was a very hip new color. It was kind of a teal color. And it was like I'd be on my little Nordic track, and I would look at that, and it would warm the cockles of my heart. I would just think, yeah, that's what I want. So I interviewed for this job at this creative agency. And they were at one building, and went through all the interviews, and they were offering me the job. And unbeknownst to me, they had moved to a new office. So guess what happens? I go to the new office, I walk up the stairs to the hip and groovy new office space, open the door, and guess what color of paint was on the wall? And the poor guy that was interviewing me, I think he wanted to take away, I think he really wanted to pull back the offer, because I was like, look at the paint. Oh my God, this is a beautiful color. He's like, yeah, great. Can I see your references again? But the point of this is that was such a powerful time in my life. And so I got really interested in this process, and I started studying. I wanted to find out how our brains worked. You know, why this is powerful stuff. And, you know, our brains have always loved pictures, you know, since the cave dwelling days. And, you know, what's really interesting, if we give our brain a job, it's just like a dog. You know, if you don't give a dog a job, they'll chew up your shoes and they'll chew up your couch. Our brains are kind of the same way, right? So we have this thing called reticular activator. The reticular activator is that part of your brain when you say, I want a silver car, and then all of a sudden you start seeing silver cars. That's the part that you start, that really starts clicking into place. Now here's a little sidebar. I didn't know this. I was like, well, this reticular activator, I've heard about this thing. This is according to the Carnegie Mellon University, the Robotics Institute. That little tiny reticular activator, right? It has to sort through 100 trillion bits of information at any time. So the RAS, it's like, give it something to focus on and it will focus on it. So that's all great, right? And I'm like, yay, this is all interesting information. And it's my own personal exploration. And then 2008 hit. And in 2008, when the economy as we once knew it started to collapse, I was working for a public radio station. I was straight commission. I wasn't a need to have, I was a nice to have. And meaning in terms of people that wanted to spend money on advertising. And I worked with a group of people, there were lizards running all over the place. I mean, we thought this is it, this is the end, what are we gonna do? Not only did I have a mortgage to pay, but I was responsible for bringing in income for that whole station. That was my job. So with all those underwriting messages. So I got really, it's like, I don't have the luxury of, lecturing or saturating myself in a bunch of fear. It's like, I got to get to it. And here's what I started doing. I started looking at my vision boards and I thought, you know what? Why is it that these 5, 6, 7 vision boards were so powerful and these other ones were pretty pictures? What was it about these, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pictures? And what I realized, the magic elixir was gratitude. For each one of those times, I can say exactly at that time of my life when I was the happiest I'd ever been. And I was just, I was doing a gratitude practice, which I'll tell you about. And here's a little tip. I just want to, give you a precursor. Our critical brains don't really like gratitude. Just kind of like, right? And so what I would do is when I was doing my gratitude practice, I'd get like a little Post-it and it would say things like, you want a silver car, right? Well, only rich people drive silver cars. You're never going to have a silver car. So I'd write that on a little Post-it and I'd put it away and I'd go right back to my practice. And I say that because those times there was alignment. We have a head brain, we have a heart brain, we have a gut brain. This is all the studies are coming out with biologically and physiologically. And what happens is when alignment happens is when that head and my heart, the two of them are in alignment. And that's really what happened. So here we are in the middle of this major crisis. People keep telling me that, oh my God, you're never gonna, the sky's falling, we're done. And it reminds me about what's happening now, only obviously it's much more so now, but the practice is the same because here's what I found out. Gratitude is the best antidote to fear and anxiety. One cannot be grateful and in lizard brain at the same time. It just doesn't work. So that was what I started implementing. I started implementing this process where I just didn't have the luxury to do anything else. So what was really interesting about it is within months, I brought in 41% of the income for the station. And I was on a 6-person team. And these people, my coworkers were coming up to me and going, hey, what's the trick, Sandy? What's the trick? And I would say, honestly, there's no trick. It's gratitude. And they'd be like, oh, funny girl, and it was like, okay. And that's what happened. And what I want to share with you is, gratitude is the key that opens up the door. It's pretty fair to say that thinking is the thing that closes it, right? Because what happens is vision doesn't happen in our brain. It doesn't happen here, it happens here. And I would just want to tell you a little story. And this is something that really helped me understand more about kind of what I'd been doing. And so a friend of mine told me this story. And there was this one day this is a true story too. There was a very promising sculptor and she was the daughter of a very famous artist and she got really sick and because she couldn't do her art, and the thing is that her dad's voice was always in the background, criticizing. So by the time when she had the courage to go back into her studio, the first thing she did is she created this sculpture and it was called Putting My Father in the Closet So I Can Get to Work. And every time she walked into her studio, she took that sculpture, she went to the closet, she put it up on the shelf, and she shut the door. And that's how she began to flourish. So that story is such a demonstration of how amazing, you know, our brains, you know, I don't think our brains are bad. Our brains are amazing things. But again, it's not where your heart's desire is going to be discovered. And it's not where this vision that's going to pull you forward lives. Most of us get stuck and angry because we can't figure it out. Well, we're working with the wrong brain. So let's talk about gratitude, because that is the avenue in terms of trying to get that tapping into that heart brain. So I want to tell you a little bit about gratitude. There's a whole science of gratitude. And when I first started researching this, it was like, oh my God, this is revolutionary. But there was a systematic study of gratitude in psychology, and it only started around the year 2000. And traditionally, what psychology really focused on at that time was they were focusing on distress. What's the problem? You know, and that's what psychology focused on. Let's fix the problem. And what this idea of this new concept in psychology is they wanted to focus on the whole picture of the person, not just the distress, but what's working for them, so that they could figure out the right, you know, the appropriate treatments. And Professor, if any of you have heard of this man, he's great. Google him, he's great. Robert Emmons, and he's at UC Davis. And he's really considered to be the grandfather of this whole movement, this positive psychology movement. And what he says, and I quote, "Gratitude just didn't seem that interesting on the surface. You know, it wasn't very complicated." And as a footnote, I read later that he was really ticked when he got stuck with gratitude. He wanted the, as he said, quote unquote, he wanted the sexy stuff. Like he wanted the stuff about happiness and joy. And he's like, all right, I'll do gratitude. And what the irony of it is that what his research and what all the findings after that concluded is that gratitude is one of the few things that can literally change someone's life, because it rewires your brain, not immediately. As a practice, it'll rewire your brain. And here's another piece I found really interesting. Conventional wisdom at the time really believed that some of us are simply born with a happiness set point, right? So we're born into the world and we just have a certain amount, you know, some people are just constitutionally more happy than others. And, you know, there's some truth to that. But the reality is, according to research and according to all these very smart neurologists and psychiatrists and psychologists that are studying this, research now suggests that up to, and I quote, 40% of our happiness might stem from intentional activities in which we choose to engage. Second, in trying to explain which activities might actually help us cultivate happiness, positive psychology keeps returning over and over to the same concept, and that's gratitude. So, you know, what they found is that, what they found with gratitude is they found that gratitude not only can change the wiring in your brain, but it affects your health. I mean, think about it. This time, you want to stay healthier? Do gratitude. You know, build your immune system. But more importantly, it opens up a portal. That's what I want to say. It opens up a portal between my brain and my head. And when those two work together, that's a vision. So I want to just end by sharing a little story with you, and then we'll open it for questions. And this is called the rail experience. So I was with my mom. I remember this must have been about when I started researching this, and my mom wasn't, you know, my mom was a very practical. She was raised by a woman, a farmer. You know, my mom was pretty practical, and she wasn't into what she said, all this woo-woo stuff. But I remember I said to her one day, I said, "Mom, do you remember a time when you were the happiest?" And my mom stopped, and without missing a beat, she closed her eyes and she started smiling. She goes, "Oh yeah." And I started getting chills. I go, "Mom, what happened?" She said, "Oh, I can tell you exactly what happened. I'm standing there she went on a cruise, and she said, and I'm looking the future, I'm looking out, and there I'm out in the ocean, beautiful, and I can see South America, and the sun's beating on my face, and there's a little bit of spray from the ocean, and there's a soft wind, and I have that sun, and I'm there, and I stopped, and I realized I'm the happiest I've ever been." And she closed her eyes and she just smiled. And I'd never seen a look like that on my mom's face before. And the reason why I wanted to share that with you is that when you have that kind of feeling and you find a picture or something that draws you towards it. So I could go on, and trust me, I have, but I'd rather open it up for questions, and the end, we're going to circle back, and I'm just going to leave you with 3 tools after we finish up the questions. 3 things to walk away with that, start today, implement it today, and I think you'll be surprised before you're halfway through. So
Sandy, thank you very much for that. So one of the things when you talked about the lizard brain, and then you talked about the head, the heart, and the gut brains. I've been aware of the concept of the 3 brains for a while. I haven't thought of them in terms of lizard and head, heart, gut. For me, it's always been survival brain, emotional brain, and rational brain. But that's the gut brain, the heart brain, and the head brain, isn't it?
I'm talking about that's our heads aren't just lizard. Our head brain is our head. That brain is what it executes, thinks of things, executes. The heart brain is really where the passion and the ideas come from. And the gut is basically like, I got a gut feeling about this. And when I work with my client, we spend most of the time trying to get alignment here, because that and the gratitude again is the thing that really just opens up a gateway to let that gratitude build up so that the possibility of creating something bigger than what my mind's telling me is going to happen, which is that I'm going to die if I don't get that next roll of toilet paper.
Got it. Got it.
So that's, hopefully that clears that up. And there's a lot of books, there's a lot of studies on it. It's very fascinating.
It is. I mean, I'm fascinated in general by that sort of thing. But the reticular activator that you talked about, I've got a friend of mine who is a big believer that if you envision something, the universe will manifest it. And I don't believe that. I think if you envision something, then you're telling your brain what you want to pay attention to. And I think that's the reticular activator, isn't it? That your brain says, this is what's important, so I'm going to let this information through and not all this other stuff. Is that a correct understanding?
Yeah, and I think, in my world, both are correct. Both you and your friend have I think both perspectives are correct. The reticular activator does that. Here's the thing. Reticular activator, if I'm afraid, and I'm really afraid, all I'll see is fear. If I want to access a different, I think what your friend's talking about is my heart, my heart brain, which is, there's nothing sappy about this. This is where, when I ask business owners, like, what was it about your business that you got into in the first place? Mom, what was that? What was the happiest you've ever been? Those don't come from our head. Those come from our heart. And so what a vision board does, and what I think your friend's referring to, is it's a picture that captures that feeling. And every time you look at that picture, and there's a whole process for doing vision boards, and you can Google that, and there's all sorts of good stuff. But if that feeling is the thing that is attracting how you want to feel, how do you want to feel in August or September or this time next year? How do you want to feel about that? What picture coming, when you're in that place where you're really, the channels open, so to speak, you'll find a picture, and oftentimes it makes no sense. Anyway, that's a whole different workshop, but you're right, your reticular activator does work. People get really frustrated because they're like, shouldn't that be enough? And I think what your friend's talking about is that alignment that happens when that picture evokes a feeling.
Got it. So is that sort of like the advice, it's sort of trite sometimes, follow your passion, but is the idea there that find out what it is that gives you that feeling that you are passionate about, that will drive and sustain you? Is that kind of?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's kind of like that picture. I'll give you an example. That picture that I found of the agency, I had no idea. That was nowhere on my radar. I put that up there because it's really like, I realized that picture, there was something about that picture. I'd been doing gratitude. It was like, I was more open to the possibility instead of my brain going, don't cut that picture out. There's no way you're going to be able to ever work in you haven't worked in a corporation in years. They're not going to hire you. You don't have the, all the stuff. And I'd say, thank you very much, write it on my little box, and I put it on the shelf, and then I'd go back to my gratitude, and I'd start looking at that picture, and I'd do my little Nordic track, and I'd go, you know what? Oh, man, I can feel it. I don't know what it's going to look like. I have no idea. I mean, it was like a month later that I got that interview, which technically, to this day, I still scratch my head, but it was the job of my dreams.
So we've got a question from Facebook, and it's asking for advice on how to take the vision board concept and practice and use it more specifically for helping change your financial situation,
Absolutely.
whether it's from, you know, struggling to being okay or being okay to being better than okay.
Oh, absolutely.
How would you do that specifically with financial stuff?
Yeah, and that's like a whole 4-hour thing. But I'm going to give you you know, for this person, you know, and I'm sorry because this is everybody's being hit right now. And what I know with money, and I work a lot with my clients, that a lot of times what happens is that people have beliefs that like money and love, I can have one or I can't have the other, or here's my cap. You know, there's like these stories we have about money. And a lot of times what I coach my clients to do is to do the gratitude practice. And here's how to do it. And people are like, it's not, you know, quote unquote sexy enough. I'm like, just try it. Do it for 2 weeks, you know, and then we'll talk, right? So what I want you to do is write 3 things that you're grateful for, but go into great detail. And I'm going to give you an example. This morning, my husband made me coffee in my favorite coffee cup. He came in and woke me up and said, sweetheart, here's your coffee. And I realized how blessed I was to have this man in my life. Yesterday, we had a party for our neighbor who's 90 years old. All the neighbors came out 6 feet apart with big signs. He turned 90 and we were like, go guy. And he started crying. I mean, these are things that like, oh my God. So you're building up that sense of like you're opening up your heart is the best way. And it's like, well, what about money? And I get that. So what I would do with people, I've worked with a lot of women that have a belief that you can't have love and money. And so what I would do is I would say, get a big heart or something that really feels, and then put money behind it, you know, focus it on there. And I'll also say that with those Post-its that I had, it's just my experience. I worked with a coach, I worked with a counselor. I had to work through those limiting beliefs. And because in 2008, similar, but obviously not as, you know, not as catastrophic as what we're going through right now, I didn't have the luxury. I had to work through those beliefs. I had to really confront them because that's what was getting in my way. And so I hope that's helpful. And it's one of those things, limit your TV. I'm just going to tell you what everybody says, limit your TV, do things that start noticing what's working, build that sense up, and then you'll be surprised how, and I'm not trying to say this is fairy dust, and I'm not trying to say that this is Pollyanna. I'm trying to say this is science. You know, businesses do this now all the time. So,
you know, if I can just add on to that, because I've done a vision board. I was going to say plural vision boards, but I think I've only done one of them in the past, and I liked it. But what I've been doing is my practice. It's little Post-it notes with little messages to myself. So I want to get back to vision boards because I am a more visual person. But one of the things you touched on with the television, I have become aware just recently of how much of my time I'm wasting, not money, but how much of my time I'm wasting. And my dad used to tell me, he used to say, time is the only resource you can never get more of. So I've become more conscious about it. And one of the things that I've done is I've got a picture of my daughter, and I put under it, I guess it's the start of a vision board. I've got a picture of my daughter, she's 3. And in fact, I wouldn't be a good dad if I didn't take this opportunity. There she is. So she's 3, and I've got a picture of her that's with her picture, that picture actually, that says, what will you do today to make her life better tomorrow? And it's focused on her, but it's also making my own life better, right? Making our life better. But I have it in the living room, which is also where the television is, which is also where the Xbox is. So for me, that's sort of a mini vision board so that I can look at it and it helps me make a better choice of how I'm going to use my time. I could watch television, or I could go into the office and respond to some emails that will help me earn.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of, and that's a great example. There's a lot of different ways of doing vision boards. People do it for a lot of things. I work primarily with business owners, and particularly right now, people are like, I need something that's going to help me get up in the morning because I just lost my business. I need something that's going to help me think that there's some hope, there's some possibility. Because you know what? Right now, I'm at home, I'm single, I have no contact with anyone. So I'm working with people that, just like our viewers and everybody out here, people are really struggling.
Yeah.
And what I can tell you is that this time you choose. You get to choose. Is this the time that you want to try something that, even though your brain goes, give me something now, fix it? That's not going to happen. So this is a time for people that I invite my clients, I invite anyone to step in and try something different. Really try something different. Here's how gratitude in that sense really works. It works in community.
Yeah.
What people I've noticed in my classes, what I'll do is I'll say, send me your gratitude hit. And people will start sending each other gratitude hits in between classes. It's a 4-week class. And
So a gratitude hit is what?
A gratitude hit. What's your favorite? What happened today that you're grateful for? And I have seen some beautiful emails over the years of people just saying this most, and you look at it and you just smile. And it's like, that's where gratitude lives. Find a group of people that you say, hey, look, I don't know, I'm hurting, you're hurting, you game to get together, let's try something, you know? And
so is it, I'm thinking both for this particular question about helping our finances, but just in general, right? At Rena-Fi, we're about transforming your financial future. So tell me if I'm getting this right, that gratitude is a tool to change your mindset, which can help you with motivation, with making better choices, with staying focused. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. It'll change your brain. Absolutely. It is a tool that people use that has it chemically changes your brain. Doesn't happen right away. They've done studies. If you want to Google it, you know, here's usually the pushback I get with this is it's just not interesting enough. It's very similar to what, you know, Dr. Emmons,
Robert Emmons. Yep.
Yeah, with UC Davis. What he talked about, it was like, quote unquote, it wasn't very sexy. It's like boring. Let's do something juicy like happiness or joy. And the reality is gratitude is the thing that's just amazing. And I'm serious when I say that I have had my share. I've gone through deaths, I've gone through cancer, I've gone through, you know, lost a business or two. I'm not, you know, I'm not here preaching, you know, this is an opportunity that people can do. You've got the time, try it.
You know, that's another thing to touch on. A lot of people have a lot more time on their hands right now because they can't do things that previously they've done, which have both taken up time and have cost money, right? So we're sort of forced into a situation where we can save money and we do have more time. And I think being mindful, like I know that there are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of hours being wasted right now with people stuck at home. So they're on television, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Facebook, TikTok, you know, social media. There's so many ways to just kill time, but you could also be on Skillshare. You could be on Masterclass. You could be on Rena-Fi watching interviews with other folks, or just on YouTube in general. There are so many great YouTube channels. This could really be kind of a forced semester of online learning. And by the time the shelter in place order is lifted, you could have a new skill set. You know, you could learn to do what I'm doing with the video editing, or learn to do what you've done with the marketing.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, there's, you know, I hear people a lot of, and this isn't, you know, in response, I understand what you're saying, but I also want to point out is that there's a lot of shaming that people, I feel that there's a lot of shaming about people that are staying at home and watching TV and checking out. And I'm like, you know, people are really afraid right now. And for people that are self-worth, and I'm just going to say the universal R, our self-worth is based on how exhausted, especially, I don't know if it's that way with men, but I certainly know with women, it's like how exhausted you are is a pledge of, you know, is a pledge of honor, and how productive you are is your self-worth, you know? And so we've got this moment of time where it's like, stop. And I just want to say out there, you know, shame-free zone. If you want to watch TV for a while, do it. Do it till you get bored with it. That's the thing. It's like, just, I don't think it helps to beat myself up because I don't know what to do. And what I'm offering is something when you're in the space where you're like I was in 2008, where I just didn't have I didn't have the luxury. It was like, I got to get going here. I got to do something. What's worked for me? Now I got to say right away, I feel like when I do my classes, it's like I make this big, beautiful, food, and there's steak, because I love steak, grass fed, sorry, I love it. I barbecue it, don't eat it very often, but man, I tell you, every so often I love a good steak. Most of my friends are vegetarians. So here I am, I'm making this beautiful table with this beautiful steak and sides, and it's lovely, and there's candles. And some people will want to come to the table and eat, and other people are vegetarian and they won't want to. And I want to say to the the vegetarians, it's kind of a weird analogy, but it's the only one I can come up with since almost all my friends are vegetarians. I just want to say the vegetarians, it's like, if there's something else you want to find that works for you, just my thought is just be gentle, just be kind and be gentle, because this time in our life is there's no words. So I just really want to say, stay away. There's so much shaming going on about how I can't tell you how many calls, I'm wasting my life, I'm wasting my time. I'm like, you know what? Maybe you're in grief and you don't know what else to do. Fine. When you get bored with that, or you're kind of at a point where you're like, okay, done. I cannot watch Netflix one more minute. I'm offering something to try. See if it's your jam.
Maybe it is a matter of, because I don't want to shame anybody, and God knows I waste plenty of time myself, but I think maybe it's a matter of being mindful of, like, okay, I've relaxed, I've had my downtime. For me personally, I work from home. My life hasn't changed all that much because of COVID-19, except that my social circle has shrunk to basically me, my girlfriend, and my daughter. But I think, like, for me, I'll work in the morning, I'll have lunch, and I'll sit down in front of the TV while I eat my lunch. And sometimes 3-4 hours later, I'm still sitting in front of the TV, and that doesn't feel good. But for me to be mindful of that, okay, this is enough. I've recuperated enough. Now I would like to shift gears a little bit, and maybe instead of watching, let's just say YouTube for entertainment, let me watch YouTube for learning. Let me find something that's interesting and watch that.
And that's perfect. That's not my jam necessarily. I watch documentaries, but everybody has a different thing. I think what's really important is to say, this is one way of doing it. Here's what my brain will do. I'll be like, you're talking to me about gratitude? Give me a break, man. We got to figure out how we're going to pay our mortgage. Blah, 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 and it's like that brain in that state of mind has never produced good results. That has never produced a good email. That has never produced a great idea. It's mostly panic. And all I'm talking about is a way of lowering that panic, so that all of a sudden, I talked to someone the other day and it was fascinating. She works in the airline industry, and there's a possibility in September, the whole airline that she's working for may go away. And I said, wow, and she said, you want to hear something really weird? And I said, what? She goes, I really love botanics, and I've been wanting to do this. And she started talking, and I watched her face, and her face started lighting up. And she started getting really excited about this. Now, prior to that, she'd been doing some work to kind of lower the fear. She wasn't in a state of anxiety. She wasn't in fear. She was like, okay, here it is. So I don't want to minimize people's pain and fear right now, because it's real.
Yeah.
There's just different ways of handling it. And what I can tell you from my experience is that this particular way is something that has changed my life. And the people that have come to my classes and the people that I stay in touch with, it's changed theirs. So,
let me ask you if I can sort of extend this idea. I'm familiar with the effect of gratitude, how powerful it can be, but I've also heard a lot about generosity as being a great tool as well. If you're depressed, doing something to help someone else, maybe the gratitude that you get from helping someone else, it's all kind of bundled together.
Yeah. So but I'm pretty partial to the practice of doing it, and anybody can take 5 minutes and do it. You got kids at home, you can do it in the bathroom. I mean, anybody can take 5 minutes and write 3 things, and then you keep your eyes open during the course of the day. And then if you get in a group of people, I'm sorry, Steve, real quick, I was going to say, you get in with a group of people that you're like, man, are you guys in a place where it's like, this is not working? And if you get a group of people that are game, like I've got a cohort of people, we just start emailing back and forth. I'm bringing it into my classes, and it's like you start noticing things, and then you have a contest, do who noticed the most.
One of the things right now is we are isolated, and somebody, I can't remember who, but on one of my friends on social media, they were talking about, we talk about social distancing, but really what we're talking about is physical distancing. Because socially, we can remain connected with each other. Absolutely. I've done a couple of Zoom calls with my brother and sister-in-law in Ohio. I did another one with some friends of mine that we used to get together and play board games all the time, and we can't do that now. They live pretty close, but we were just talking and kind of going through the list of board games that I have that we could play over Zoom. So I just need to figure out how to set up the camera to point it down so we can all see the board. I can do all the movement. They just say, I want to move to this spot. Absolutely. So I think with some creativity, we can connect, but the gratitude, like let's get on Facebook. And I know you have 3 things to be grateful for every day. We can post that on social media and get our friends and family to post their gratitude every day. And that can be a great sort of groundswell of gratitude to help all of us, I think.
Absolutely. And it's happening. It's just give your reticular activator something to look for, because otherwise all it'll see is, empty shelves at the grocery store.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
we're going to put up a slide with Sandy's information. It's the Simplified Path, and there'll be a slide on it so you can see that, take a screenshot, jot it down, whatever you want.
So here's something that has been so effective. Put your father in the box so you can work. Find a container. This is really, if you're like, okay, I'm jamming on this. It's time. Get a container, get some sticky notes, and before you start writing your gratitudes, I always call it feedback from your inner critic, because what'll happen is go ahead, write those on, and then put it on the shelf. And your brain, it's a great tool. So that's one of the things I talked about in terms of fear, and before you start your practice. Think of your own real experience. This is probably one of the most powerful things. It's a 4-week class that I do, and I think this is either first or second class. And when people start thinking about, and feeling about the happiest times they are, and they write it down, and then they share it in class, their faces are amazing. But what it does is it gives your body, your mind, an understanding of what that comes from your heart brain. That's where vision lives. So it's a great way of trying to understand, if you're really in your head, to try and understand what this vision place is that I keep talking about. And every day, write 3 things in great detail that you're grateful for. And it's a simple process. And I have to say that the people that I'm working with right now that are in this process are coming up with ideas for their business, and they're coming up with ideas. It's not happening right away. Everybody's, there's an arc with this fear. There's an arc that everybody's dealing with. But I have to say that when you're at that place in your own arc where you think, you know what? Okay, try gratitude, try vision, and you got time, might as well.
So speaking of gratitude, I'm just going to say that we're grateful to you, Sandy, for sharing this with us. And this is Sandy's information, The Simplified Path, www.thesimplifiedpath.com. So I'm going to leave this up for you, Sandy, and for the folks who are watching, so they can take a picture, a screenshot, whatever they want. And also, when you go to the Simplified Path, click on the limb dwellers link at the top, because that is a fascinating concept. I've interviewed Sandy before. We talked about it. In fact, I think on the Rena-Fi, RENA-FI YouTube channel, we have an excerpt from that interview with Sandy where she talks about limb dwellers. So check that out as well. But thank you, everybody. Stay safe, wash your hands, and practice gratitude in whatever way you can. And it'll change your brain. It'll change your life.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Stay safe.